everybody. It's Sam Amico with another Hoops Wire Live on 330 to go. We're back for the first time in a few weeks away from training camp. And obviously, happy Friday the 13th for those of you who are watching live. I don't know that happiness and Friday the 13th are, usually said in the same sentence, but here we are. This is the way we're going to handle it. And today, you'll be happy to know I have a special guest, and that would be Aaron Conrad, the host of the Mark Price podcast. Aaron, welcome. Very happy to have you. How are you? What's new with you?
Man, this is really exciting. I am very excited and honored to be here. Always great to have you on Mark's podcast. And so to be able to come onto yours is pretty cool. But yeah, it's Friday the 13th for those that celebrate. And so yeah, it's great. It's great.
Yeah. Aaron, I have a dilemma that before we get started on the good stuff, I needed to run by you.
Okay.
I need your help here. So it's, as we've covered, it's Friday the 13th. I have lunch, a meeting with a buddy later, and it's on Elm Street.
Oh,
so
a nightmare.
I was kind of going to ask you and the viewers whether or not I should actually go to this on Friday the 13th, this meeting I have on Elm Street.
Well, hopefully you won't, break a mirror on the way or walk under a ladder. A black cat won't run out in front of you. I mean, if any of those things happen, then that's probably the sign that maybe this lunch should probably be rescheduled. Otherwise, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, as long as I don't spill any salt when I'm there,
throw it over your shoulder.
It's bad news. So, anyway, you've been hosting the Mark Price podcast now for how long?
We're coming up on 2 years. We started it right before the start of camp, right when I guess 2 years ago. So yeah, we're coming up on our 100th episode. It's been recorded. It's in the books, and we haven't announced who it is yet, but it's going to be special. I can tell everybody that it's very, very special episode.
Yeah, and for those watching and want to know about another special guest, I think my 6th appearance was on episode 96.
Yeah. So you've been on several times, and each time bring great insight for it. So it's always good to have you on. You're closer to the team. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. He's in Atlanta. So it's good to have somebody that's close to the team that can give us all the latest dirt.
Right. Yeah. And sadly, there's not much dirt around the team right now. It's been pretty calm.
Yeah.
But there's a few other, don't you do a few other podcasts as well?
I do.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And what are those?
One is mine. That's how Mark and I met was, I just have one called Unscripted. It's Aaron Unscripted. And it's just much like this. It's just guests. And it's always unscripted, so you never know what you're going to get. But I do that one. Really, I just allow people to come on and tell their story. Everybody's got one. And so they'll never go out of style. So it's pretty cool to just hear so many incredible stories. And, it's so that one's a lot of fun. Just had this week did one with Joel Penton, who is the CEO of LifeWise Academy, but also a former Buckeye. And so we did talk a little bit about, the big baptism thing that happened that's gone viral, everybody's talking about. And that was really cool to get his perspective on that, because he did that actually about in 2006 at St. John's Arena. They held an event called The Main Event, had 13,000 people there.
Wow.
But there was no social media then, not to the extent that there is now. So that would have been a viral moment as well.
Yeah, 2006 was the invention of the iPhone.
Right.
So, we weren't scrolling on our phones. We were kind of using our computers still back then.
Yeah.
But I always know that 2006 is the invention of the iPhone, because until last year, the Sacramento Kings had not made the playoffs since before the invention of the iPhone. So I wrote that like 1,000 times on the website. My other big stat that I keep writing on the website is that the Washington Wizards have not hit 50 wins in a season since 1979.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that's the reaction I get every time. So I keep writing it.
Yeah.
And I tweeted that out once, that the Wizards hadn't won 50 games since 1979 during the playoffs. And no less than Mark Price responded, and he said, yeah, well, it's not happening this year either.
That's right. I remember that now. I do remember that.
Yeah. which is funny because, of course, his brother, Brent Price, played, most people know him from his time in Washington. And of course, has been a guest on the podcast. But so, okay. So did you have a background in podcasting before 2 years ago?
No, I actually it started during the pandemic. I was bored, and boredom is not my friend. And so, my daughter actually had one that she doesn't do anymore. And so but I asked her, I'm like, what is this podcast thing? I don't even listen to them. I don't know what they are. And so she showed it to me, and then it actually wasn't supposed to start as a podcast. There was a lot of racial tension at the time. It was kind of when a lot of things were happening, and the facility that I worked at, we had the Columbus Destroyers were one of our tenants. They worked out and had practice there. So I got to know their coach really well and several of the players. And so I was just seeing this stuff on TV, and I thought, how can we do something that's positive? So I reached out to him. I'm like, guys, we think about just hopping on a Zoom call. We'll record it. I'll put it out in the world. We'll just talk about how we can be better as people. We did it, and it just got such a great response. And I'm like, wow, well, that was kind of fun. People are like, you can do more, another one. And so it just so then I was like, well, I know some really just great people, just your friends I've had, and they have great stories and they should be told. So I started inviting friends, and then the circle just kept getting bigger and bigger. And so, I didn't really start off to do this, but here we are. I'm at 309, I think yesterday's was. So been doing it ever since the pandemic.
Okay. So you went from that to Mark Price.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
Well, he's got a lot of grace. I'll give you that.
Yeah, he does.
And there's a very funny story, because it almost did not come about, that I can't share. But just trust me when I say no, episode 1 almost did not happen. And it's just a funny story, but we'll share it someday on his show, I guess. Sure. But no, it was funny. He came on my show once, and I was so honored. I mean, just blown away that my childhood hero would come on my little podcast. And so we hit it off pretty well. And then I think about a year later, I asked him to come on again. Just figured, well, I'll try, let's see. And I did. And at some point we somehow exchanged numbers in that process, and email, whatever. And I just had an idea, and I would touch base with them on Christmas or Thanksgiving. Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I didn't want to bother him. And I just had a stirring one day, and I was like, I got this idea, like Mark Price for 3. That's it's iconic in Cleveland. Yeah. And so I shot him a thing, and I said, hey, you can say no, this is fine. And so I ran the idea by him, and he said, let me think about it. And then he got back to me. He said, yeah, I think we should do that. And I mean, it's incredible. I like to think it's a God thing. Our relationship has been awesome. He's just somebody was asking me about him earlier today. And I said, the most incredible thing is, he's exactly who you would hope he is. And if anything, even more. He's just an incredible human being. Like I said, he gives me a lot of grace on the show, because you never know what you're going to get. But he's challenged me in my faith, my walk with Christ, and man, he's salt of the earth, and I'm so honored to do the show with him.
It's really cool. And to give you a little background on my relationship with Mark. I think one time when I was writing a story for my website, I thought I'd like to get a Legends take on this year's team. That was probably, the year after they won the championship. And I knew Mark had started following me on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And so I DM'd him, and I said, hey, I'm looking to get your take on the Cavs entering training camp. And he DM'd me right back. And he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, here's, what's your number? And I gave him my number. And within like 10 seconds, he called. I'm like, how did he even have time to read the number? He got me on the bat phone.
Yeah. So, the red line.
And he was great. And he said, anytime you need anything, let me know. And so I took advantage of that. I eventually started, when I was writing one of my books, I thought he'd be a great source to talk to. And same situation. Just called him right up and talked for an hour, So, which is funny, because when when he was a player, probably about 92, 93, I was starting as a stringer for a Cavs newspaper. It was one of my things. And it was a Cavs publication. And I would write for them like once or twice a month. And I remember, I would go up into the locker room with Mark Price, Brad Doherty, Larry Nance Sr., Lenny Wilkins. And Mark was pretty guarded and quiet then, and I mean, we're in our 20s or whatever at that point. But now, as I think I told him on one call, I told him, you were real quiet when I covered you then. And he said, yeah, now you can't get me to stop. But yeah, so he's going to be, obviously, I've reached out to him about being a guest on here, which would be a
way better guest.
Thing. So yeah, what's that?
I said he'll be a way better guest than.
No, I don't know. I think we'll decide that after both appearances.
All right, there you go. That sounds good.
We'll
good.
Put a poll up.
Oh, don't do that. Don't do that because I'm going to lose that poll every day.
We'd all lose a poll in Cleveland tomorrow.
Right. Absolutely.
So then, yeah, you started doing that, and some of your more notable guests, I mentioned Brent. You said that the most listened to one, right, so far is the one with Laura Price, Mark's wife.
It is.
Which I saw that and listened to it and saw the clip on your Facebook page. And I thought that was a real interesting story that she told about his first game. It was against Georgia, right? Georgia Tech.
Yep.
And he went to Georgia Tech and they played Georgia. So, and then didn't he say, I can't remember the rest of the story from there. Didn't he have a terrible game or something from there?
He did. Yeah. The way that he tells it way better, and especially Laura telling it too, that was their first date. As I remember it, it was their first date. And yes, they were playing their big rival game. And, she said, I thought you looked great out there. And he's like, I played the worst game I've ever played. and my favorite part is I believe Coach Cremens told him, hey, if you're going to play like that, then that's this is not the girl for you. There's something along those lines. It's pretty funny. It's like, if those are going to be the results. And he said, but I knew when she said, you look great out there, that I had a keeper. And so, and here they are. Yeah. She's fantastic. And that whole interview was awesome. It was just so good. And I think statistically it's still the largest one. I haven't looked at them in a while, but for a long time, she was number one episode.
That's great. So Sam Amico is not number one.
Well, I said I haven't looked. I gave myself an out. I'll have to go back and look. Yeah, I'm sure it's up there. I guarantee it's up there because it is always very interesting, and you bring more insight to the Cavs than Mark and I have. We just we're fans at this point. If I can say that. He's obviously much more than a fan, but at this point we'll watch a game and break it down, talk about it. Yeah, that's great.
And then I had another really personal question for you that I can't remember what it was.
Was it Purple Rain for my for Christmas?
Well, we know that Mark's a Bee Gees fan, right?
Yes. Breaking news.
I don't know that he wants us sharing that, but it's too
breaking
bad
news.
I think you said it on the podcast. So So do you feel, I know that you've talked about working on other projects or things like that. Do you feel like you're going to branch out a little bit at all, or maybe do other podcasts or anything like that? Or are you pretty content with what you got going on right now?
With Mark, you mean, or personally?
Anything. Yeah. Either with Mark or with just your own kind of network there. Yeah.
I really enjoy mine. At some point, I think I'm going to have to pick up another job. I do work night. I work evenings at a place than now, but yeah, no, I really enjoy mine. Mark and I have talked about, honestly, we do it. We say we do it for the one, and we do it for the one, and the one person that listens, and the Lord. That's why we do that show. If that time ever was to, happen where we both feel like, it's run its course, then, I think we'll both be okay with that. We do have a wish list of guests that I'm chasing, trying to get to come on the show. I did one with the local high school coach. It was called the Cloud of Dust podcast with Hilliard Davidson's football coach.
Okay.
He wants to do it again, but they're game 4 tonight, I believe it is already. So the season's going very quick. I did one with the local basketball coach, kind of just coaches shows. They were kind of fun, small. I did one with some guys from, I don't know if you've ever heard of 270 Hoops, but kind of it's a prep kind of basic basketball league and team and rankings and things. They follow all the local high school players. So we had one called 270 Unscripted. We had some great guests on there. And then we just decided not to keep rolling with it after a while. But so I almost felt like I got spread too thin. And I felt like I was neglecting my own show for all these other ones I was running around chasing. And so, I just decided, let me just stick to the 2 for now, but I'm certainly open to anything.
Yeah.
if anybody's listening.
Right. So, and I got that way too. I started to branch off and do too many things. Mm-hmm. And then, the old saying, keep the main thing. And then so started kind of, all right, let's hone in on 2 or 3 things. Yeah. Instead of trying to do 10 when I looked at, what's more time consuming, taking time away from the family and not as valuable.
Right.
I certainly get that. Now, you grew up in Bedford. Am I
right?
Correct.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
The
Let me
216.
tell you a quick story about Bedford. I actually dated. Well, I don't want to say dated because we were in 9th grade. I was in 9th grade, and my girlfriend at the time. Well, as much of a girlfriend you can have in 9th grade, dumped me. So now
I didn't mean to laugh.
Yeah, imagine that.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure she has many regrets today.
Right.
But that was that. So I went to Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy. So kids came from all over. Well, when my girlfriend dumped me, I ended up finding a girl who looked just like her, and she was from Bedford.
Is that right?
And the only difference was the girl who looked just like her had to wear her night braces to school. So I got dumped. I got dumped for the girl who had to wear the night braces to school.
The headgear?
What's that?
The headgear?
The whole headgear.
Oh, man.
Wear it for like the first period or 2.
Oh.
And I remember, just don't be seen in the hall with her during those 2 periods. And then, it was a major rebound thing because it was like, this girl looks like her, except for the whole night brace thing. But I just remember she was from Bedford. She was very proud of being from Bedford. And it didn't last long because I don't think I ever got past the
headgear.
Braces. Yeah. But, right. Yeah. That's Aaron, that's my young love life in a nutshell.
Right?
Getting dumped and then,
Well, I thought you were going to say, I'm going to ask you offline because I think I might know who that person is, but I'll ask offline.
Because there was one girl in Bedford who had to wear the night braces.
I know she went to CVCA, so I'll ask offline because I don't want to put her on blast on your show. But,
right.
Make fun of her headgear on your show, but no, I thought at first you were going to say Halle Berry.
Time. It's fine.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Halle Berry.
Who's a Cleveland girl.
She's a Bedford girl. Yeah.
Bedford. Wow. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Missed her by a year.
With her?
I tell people I did, but no, I didn't.
That's the correct answer. That's the correct answer.
No, I actually went to school with her cousin. I missed her by a year, actually. She was 1 year. My freshman year, had just graduated. She was my sister's age, actually. I knew her cousin. But another guy is T.C. Stallings. Played a little bit, went to Louisville, great football player. Now he's in movies. He was in Courageous. He was in War Room. He was, so he always says that he and Halle are the only 2 to have the #1 movie in America. And they both came from Bedford, from Bedford, that is. But when I tell him that, he said, that's not going to work. I said, I tell everybody I dated Halle Berry. And he says, that's not going to work. I got a video of it. So it's pretty funny. But no, TC's great. He's doing great things. So we're real proud of him. There's been some people come through Bedford.
Yeah. That's really cool. I probably, sadly, am one of the more notable alumni from CVCA. But I will tell you my other connection that is exclusive to myself. I believe this, and Larry Nance Jr. And I've run this past him, and he said, it has to be the case. I said, we're the only 2 people probably in human history who were born in Akron, Ohio, moved to Wyoming, to get our start, and then returned to work out of the Cavs practice facility and locker room.
There you go.
I said, we got to be the only two people in human history. That's probably never happened. At least not unless there's some, no name who happened to do that.
That's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what a journey. And then to have it happen twice for two different, happen for two guys.
People.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I remember when he was a sophomore in college, he came home over the summer and I ran into him. He was at University of Wyoming. Well, first of all, his mother, Larry Jr.'s mother, Mrs. Nance, he said, will you talk to my mom? Because University of Wyoming is the only place that's offered me, Division I school that's offered me a full ride. And he said, and she doesn't want me to go. And he said, I know you lived out there. Will you talk to her? So I did. And I don't know that it went, she just kind of looked at me like, who is this guy?
That's right.
And, but I guess it went well enough because he thanked me later. But after his sophomore year at the University of Wyoming, I saw him over the summer and I said, because I was covering the Cavs full time at that point, and I said, someday I'm going to be writing about you in the NBA. And he said, you know what he said? I don't think that's in the cards for me.
Really?
Yeah. And then, and Larry Sr. used to tell me about himself. He said, I was a late bloomer at Clemson. Nobody really thought I was going to be an NBA player either after probably even my junior season. And then you see what he did. And then, of course, you see, how Larry has kind of became a late bloomer at the University of Wyoming. And then really Pete I don't think a lot of people suspected he would even be, a 10-day, two-way contract type player with the Cavs as a rookie. But he also has really seemed to improve this game as he's gone on. So to take up the entire show and make you listen to me, that's my Larry Jr. story. Anyway,
much better stories.
Right.
You have much better stories.
At this time of year, it's really kind of story time because we're about 3 weeks away now from training camp.
Yeah, it'll be here soon.
Yeah, and it'll be here before you know it. And then, really, I put the pedal to the metal. But for you, we look at the Cavs, and they're one of three teams that have not signed a free agent to a standard contract. They join the world champion Boston Celtics, and it makes sense that they haven't signed anybody. Los Angeles Lakers haven't signed anybody, which is amazing.
Very surprising,
And then the Cavs. So, I think that as we discussed on your podcast, we're kind of looking at it like, let's see what happens with Kenny Atkinson, where we go there, and we can make changes all the way till really February. I know on your podcast you said you kind of had a little bit of a wish list. Now you're a huge North Carolina fan, right?
What gave it away? What gave it away?
Right.
When I was going to mention Pete Nance as a Tar Heel. So
right,
at least for 1 year he was, but and that was a rough year for Pete Nance. But anyway, yes, Tar Heel.
Yeah. So, there's been reports on my website. Obviously, it sounds like the Cavs have had some talks for, Cam Johnson. You and I had mentioned Nasir Little, who's a free agent, was waived. Do you have kind of what's your take on this team going into the season as far as not making any changes yet, and just kind of what you see? Are you disappointed that they haven't made any changes? Are you hoping that they sign for somebody? Or
I think so. I think we're all disappointed. Such a weird word because it sounds like we're mad at them, But no, I think it's a little disappointing that because I think the wait and see approach is really. It's like, man, I don't know. I think maybe if they had stronger results against Orlando, who is just going to get better. And, you've mentioned so I assume they've signed some guys. I don't remember who they signed now off the top of my head, but, Orlando's.
Maybe it's Caldwell Pope from the Nuggets, who was,
there you go.
Good shooting guard, good defender. Yeah.
Yep. And he's got some championship pedigree now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you look at all the landscape of the other teams and they all made moves that they needed to make. And I guess if I felt like the Cavs maybe had a stronger playoff, I'd feel better. I think that's it, is a lot of us were kind of like, man, they kind of got by in the playoffs for a while, ran into obviously the world champions, but yeah, the Mitchell signing was big, and I think everybody was kind of thinking maybe the dominoes would start to fall after, hey, is the guy going to be around? Because I'd certainly love to play with him, or if he's not going to be there, I don't want to go to a rebuild, that kind of thing. So when all those things didn't happen, I think everybody's kind of like, now what, And hey, they've got talent. There's no doubt about that. When those Cavalanches happen, they come quick, but then they tend to not stay in that mode long. They get these runs. And so can they sustain that for a whole game? That'll be very interesting to watch. But they've got talent. There's no doubt about it. I think I would love, and I know we joke about the Tar Heels, but to me, that's a player that fits perfectly. A 3-and-D guy. He's long. He's athletic. He can shoot it. He can shoot it so well. He would help spread that floor. I'd love to see Cam Johnson, hopefully not having to give up much to get him. And I know the Nets are kind of in a fire sale, but it sounds like from your side, especially, they may be wanting a little bit too much. And I don't know what they're asking the Cavs for, but that's probably going to be a tough thing to get. But I'd love to see Cam Johnson. I think Nasir Little's, you mentioned that on Mark's show, and I was like, wow, I didn't think about that, because I know he got cut. But he's tough and he's young. He only played a year at Carolina. And even in that year, he really didn't show. I think he was a one and done guy. And I think everybody maybe knew that. It was very surprising he even went to Carolina in the first place. People were kind of shocked that he chose Carolina. I think he might have flipped from someplace else, if I remember.
I think so. Yeah. I think, and I can't remember where, but I think he did before.
Yeah, he flipped. And so didn't really fit the system there. But tough kid, good defender, not a great shooter. So I don't know that he'd help in that area, but I think he'd help the bigs for sure. And that could be said about Pete Nance too. And when I said he had a tough year at Carolina, he had huge shoes to fill, because Brady Manick the year before was just so dynamic. I mean, just incredible, perfect fit, and the fans loved him. But we only got him for 1 year, and then Pete comes in, and everybody thought he was just gonna take over where Brady Manick left off, and he struggled a little bit with his shot, and I think his confidence went with it a little bit. But yeah, he started playing better towards the end of the year. But anyway, I don't know. I probably need to do a better job of looking at the site and seeing who's out there and what's available in the free agents. But yeah, I think they do need to get some bigs. I know they signed Tristan, but that to me, that's a feel good thing. It's a Cleveland. Hey, he's been a guy, he's champion
won a
here.
championship.
But I don't know how much. Of course, I didn't think he'd help much last year. He ended up playing quite a bit before he had his issues. but he did contribute, and he brought a toughness that I think a lot of people thought was lacking versus the Knicks. The Morris twin, I don't remember which one they had, but Marcus. Did they re-sign him? I know they talked about
Not yet. No, there's been talk that they might, but they haven't yet. So
again, toughness, he can shoot it. He showed in some games last year that he can really, really score the ball. But yeah. And there's just a toughness there that I think they have to continue to have that kind of culture and identity, not be the bad boys by any means, but that's what I'd like to see. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
That's what I like on this show. Long answers. I can drink my coffee. I can take a little nap.
Yeah, you definitely could have taken it. I probably put you to sleep telling that story.
Well, my whole thing is I'm a little surprised that they haven't, I look at, not that the Bulls are the benchmark here or the blueprint, but I look at Chicago and they've signed, I thought the Cavs would try to get some of these guys who are kind of like the last chance saloon type of guys, like in this year Little. I look, Chicago Bulls signed Taylor Horton Tucker, who was a nice player, to a training camp contract. It's, you got to make the team before we give you a deal. EJ Liddell, formerly of Ohio State.
Right.
They signed him as well. And they signed another veteran player like that, who is kind of a guy who it's like, if you don't make the team here, you're probably headed overseas. And they, and I see Chicago, the Celtics, signed Lonnie Walker IV, who had a decent run with the Nets last year, and played for the Lakers during that run to the Western Conference Finals a couple years ago. Those kind of guys, I thought, and they're just getting training camp deals. They're not getting guaranteed deals. I would have liked to have seen the Cavs, and there's still time. Yeah. There's still time to go out and get, because there's still guys like that available. Markelle Fultz, the former #1 overall pick, who had a very nice year for the Magic,
right?
He's still available out there. Wow. Now, does he exactly fit what the Cavs need? Well, they're hoping that Craig Porter Jr. takes another step, and that, Ty Jerome, who you and Mark really like.
I really like,
Yeah, who they're hoping that those two guys can man the point guard spot behind Darius Garland. But still, somebody to me like Markelle Fultz, who's gotten no offers, hey, do you want a deal for training camp? It's a make good deal. You can get a 1-year deal if you make the team. So I would like to see them, obviously the need, as you pointed out, Aaron, is the front court, the bigs behind Allen and Mobley, because we know there's a lot of injuries. I don't think you can just go to bat with Tristan and Dean Wade. Dean's more of a small forward almost.
Yep.
So, look, if we know that, they know that, and they'll bring some guys in somehow, some way to camp. But I think that's really an issue that really needs shored up. As far as, not making any changes beyond the coach, I would say that having covered the NBA for, I guess, 20 years now or whatever, if you count the Mark Price era, 30. But I would say, and yet I'm still only 35. So
that's right. Incredible. You started writing when you were 5. It's amazing.
But, I think that coaching, I don't want to say coaching doesn't matter, because it does, but it's really only to me, coaching in the NBA is don't be bad. We really only notice if you're bad. Yeah. And I think that maybe they felt like that second half of the season last year and the season before, the Cavs weren't playing their best after the All-Star break. They played their best both years before the All-Star break. That's not to say JB Bickerstaff's a bad coach, because I don't think he is. And I think he's going to do a great job in Detroit. But I think that at some point, and Larry Bird once said this, after like 5 years when I'm playing in the NBA, I feel like I need a new voice. And I think Mark kind of agreed with that when I brought, he shook his head yes when I brought that up. So I think that's probably why the Cavs made the coaching change. But I feel as if this is okay, stay the course, but at some point you're going to learn, we need a roster upgrade somehow, some way to compete with the Philadelphias, to even hope, the Bostons, the New York Knicks, who made a huge trade and got Mikal Bridges, the Indiana Pacers. Nobody talks about them. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Yeah. And then, as you said, the Orlando Magic are there. You can never count out Miami. There's six teams right there. And I think, 7, throw in the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh, right. Right.
So, the Cavs are going to have their work cut out for them. And I don't know that a coaching change alone, maybe it will be the difference that they need, because we've seen, Aaron, remember last year when they won 17 of 18 in that one stretch, we saw that cohesiveness can carry you a long way. So that's my whole take on them. With, I'll have obviously more updates on the website, but they still haven't gotten any answer on Isaac Okoro, what's going on there. He's a restricted free agent, the only one in the NBA who's left. And you've got to figure out what's going on there. You got to figure out what's going on with your rookie, Jalen Tyson. How good's he? If he's good enough, is he going to be taking minutes away from Isaac Okoro or Karis LeVert? I mean, so those are things that are kind of training camp questions. But I know that fans can be, and we talked about this on Mark's podcast, can be a little, please, for the love of Pete, do something. That's right. And I try to say, look, they've got all the way until February to make a trade. And I think that's, that's the way they're looking at it. Like, let's see what we got here, the hand that we're dealt. We don't have a lot of wiggle room financially, so let's see what kind of hand we're dealt and take it from there. And, I've seen people have them picked from anywhere from 4th to 7th
Mhm.
in the East. So, and I don't know about you, but I would think that that's kind of the range that they should fall in. Hopefully closer to the 4th.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to be the old Pacers where you are good enough to make the
Yeah.
playoffs, but not good enough to hang around and not getting draft picks. And
Yeah.
so the Pacers used to do that. They got in that cycle, and that's certainly not where you want to be. But you also don't want to lead the league in number 1 draft picks, which the Cavs did for many years. The most
Right,
exciting thing was the most exciting night was where the ping pong balls landed to see if we got the number 1 pick. But so it's nice to not be in that range. But I know last year Mark was pretty steadfast throughout the year that he felt like the Cavs were one of the top 4 teams in the league. I think based on a lot of the changes that you mentioned, I'm not sure that either one of us feel that way. I don't know. I'd have to ask him again, but I think we're a little concerned about how the other teams got better. And I'm not saying the Cavs didn't. You know, one thing we haven't mentioned is there was health issues last year. I mean, they battled so many injuries, and so you did have a chance to see guys like Porter, Sam Merrill, guys coming up that probably wouldn't have been up playing with the team. And so it was kind of cool to see that. And I remember I think we talked about this on one of your visits. I think it was exciting because we thought, hey, they just strengthened their bench and these guys are getting quality time. So when the playoffs come, they're going to be ready to, they've added some depth here almost by accident because of all the injuries that they've dealt with. I don't think we saw that a lot of those guys didn't get playing time, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's how we were looking at it. Was like, hey, this is great for the team to find these guys that they have and find out what they have in these guys. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think they do have some. What's the Monty Bates story? Is I mean, I know he's shown flashes, but does he have any kind of a future? You think?
I think look. I think guys like Amani Bates and Luke Travers, who was signed from Summer League, the Australian, who they drafted a few years ago and has been playing in Australia, has come and he's now on a 2-way contract. And then JT Thor, a former 2nd-round pick who played with the Hornets. He's a big guy. He signed a 2-way contract with them. His agent, Aaron Turner, is from Orange, Ohio, actually. And JT Thor looked very good for South Sudan in the Olympics. Had a nice showing against Team USA. So I think that those guys with Bates in that group, the Cavs are willing to be patient with them. Look, Amani has to be more than I don't want to say a chucker, but he has to be more than a guy who just shoots threes. And I think that that's been the emphasis this year. Look, we're going to give you another year with the charge, bring you up here. You'll be in camp with us, practice, probably get some playing time in actual Cavs games. So what else can you do beyond, I don't want to say just shoot threes, because look, he's a great guy and I think he's got a great work ethic. But, sometimes I think players kind of fall into a habit, and I think that they want him to continue to shoot threes and be good at that. But there's so much promise with that kid. I think if they could just, they want to see and be patient and bring it out. And say they feel the same thing with Luke Travers, who's more of a wing player, and then JT Thor. I think they feel that way about all of them. They're going to give those guys an opportunity to develop kind of at their own pace. There's no pressure for them. It's not like, hey, we're going to be turning to you in the NBA playoffs. Right. This is we're hoping this is our future. That's kind of like same thing in baseball, where you get guys that you're excited about who are in AA. That's kind of how they feel about these three and some other players as well. So, let's give them time to develop. With Bates, I don't foresee him this year, unless he comes out of nowhere, being a major factor, because they just have so many wing players. If there's one area that the Cavs have great depth, it's at the wing.
Right.
We talk about Max Strus and really even Dean Wade. I kind of consider him more of a wing. Excuse me. And Jalen Tyson, who they drafted, and assuming Okoro is going to be back, Karis LeVert, Sam Merrill's a shooting guard, but you still kind of consider those guys the small forward shooting guard group. So, I mean, where would somebody like Bates probably wouldn't get much time anyway? But the hope is, this is a kid who was compared to Kevin Durant coming out of high school.
Right.
And you're hoping to tap into that and not give up on it, and see where that goes. So that's probably a longer answer than you wanted about Amani Bates, but
no, that's great.
I think that's where they stand with him, and they're being patient with guys like him. But
do they still have Burns? Did he stick around? Did they sign him to anything? The kid from NC State.
Oh, he could be a training camp invite.
Okay.
I don't know. He was obviously summer league. He's got a real intriguing game, obviously, with that size.
Yeah. And he's getting himself in shape. From last I saw, he lost quite a bit of weight.
Yeah, he lost like 35 pounds since the end of the season. I think part of that weight and that big frame was what made the Cavs made him appealing. So he still has enough of that strength, I think, that I think he's a real possibility for the Charge. And again, those guys, you never know what's going to happen. Nobody last year at this time thought, boy, they got Craig Porter Jr. He's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Like when they signed this random undrafted guy.
Yeah.
What for? And then, sometimes these guys' games translate very well to the NBA. That's diamonds in the rough. And you always, and it's not just the Cavs, you find them on every team. So, I think that, we're trying to find one of those, whether it's Burns, whether it's Amani Bates, whether it's Luke Travers, or a guy who can come in and all of a sudden, out of the blue, be a contributor. Now, the one thing I will say about the Cavs is who your top 8 guys are, probably, maybe 9. So, there's only so many minutes to go around. But what's nice about having depth isn't that those guys are going to play every game. It's that, as you said earlier, Aaron, there's injuries, right? And you want guys who are going to be able to step in without really missing too much of a beat when there's these endless injuries, whether it's to your star players or role players or whatever. And that's why you build, you want to go 15 deep if you can, because during the regular season. And you know what? The regular season in the NBA, especially now, every game pretty much counts, because you look how tight these races are for seeds 1 through 8 in both conferences.
Right.
These, you want to avoid the play-in tournament, you got to win every game.
Yeah.
You've got to, it's not one of these nights where and I think Donovan Mitchell talked about that last year. He was like, there's so much parity in the NBA now. You can't say, well, we lost this one, but we'll get tomorrow's. You got to get tonight's.
Yeah.
And I think that they, across the NBA, that's become a reality. So I had another story for you along the lines of the braces girl. And it was really important for me to share it, but I can't remember it right now. I've just got a lot on my mind, but so it might even be better. But if I remember it, I'll share it at some point. My next question for you, though, is, so I was on episode 96, right?
Right.
So it was just you and Mark on 97, right? And 98?
98 and 99, yeah.
But you have a guess. When is 100 coming out? When are we going to know about 100?
Well, actually, I'll say, just in case, there's 2 invites that are still floating around out there.
Okay.
And it'll be a timing thing, because it's, if it's when we can get these 2 invites, and they're not together, they're 2 separate people, but those invites are out. And so if one of them we're really close to getting, and so if either one of those gentlemen says, hey, I can do it this day, then it may come in 98, 99, not sure. But when is 100 going to be out? It'll be out so next week will be 98, the week after will be 99. So I think that last week in September will be episode 100. Yep.
Okay. Well, I hope that you get I always feel like, well, I got a call from Aaron about coming on Mark's podcast. Clearly they couldn't get anybody better.
No, it's never the case. It's never the case, especially over the summer, the long summer, that, like you said, there wasn't much to talk about when it came to that. We had the Olympics, and so we talked about some other things. He had his camps going on as well, which were really successful. And I know he loves getting back to the Cleveland area and doing his camps. Those were a lot of fun for him. So we talked about things like that. And there always seems to be something that pops up during the week, but I know we'll both be real excited to get college and NBA game going again.
Yeah. That is much better for my website as well when
I imagine
when it's not football season, or the start of football season. So yeah, I certainly get that. And I always like to joke that there was one episode of your podcast where I kind of filled in for Mark. Mark was not there, and you had me on filling in. I like to tell people who don't know any better that was the most listened to episode of the Mark Price podcast.
Well, or that you're his backup. I mean, like you got to be backup to Mark Price. You can put that on a resume.
Right.
Backed up Mark Price once. You just don't have to say it was a podcast, but
right. I'm the Darnell Valentine of the Mark Price podcast. So.
I told Mark this story, and I'll make it as quick as possible. The first time I was in an autograph session with, for him. It was at Dunham Sports in Southgate at, right by Maple Heights. And he was going to be in town. Such a big fan, he was my hero. And so I waited in this long line. The whole time I'm waiting, I'm like, what am I going to say? I got to say something that'll just, catch his attention. And, they had just drafted Kevin Johnson. And so I'm waiting in line. waiting in line. I get up there. I slid my poster across the table, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, if Kevin Johnson doesn't work out, give me a call. I'll back you up." And he didn't even crack a smile. I was like, I was so stupid when I walked away. I'm like, why did I say that? It was like, what's his name? Chris Farley walking away, just like so dumb. Why did I say that? Because I was like, I thought that was gonna land perfect, and he just signed it, and he kind of looked up at me, and just slid it over, and reached for the next item for somebody to sign. So I was like,
slapping yourself on the head.
I was like, I wasn't mad at Mark. I was like, man, that was the dumbest thing ever to say, but I was trying to be funny, but anyway, so I share that with him.
I will tell you, and I've told Mark this story, and he said he doesn't remember, but he has very little doubt that it's true. So I was just out of high school. The Cavs had just drafted Kevin Johnson. It was that summer.
Yep.
And Mark was playing for the Cavs. Well, my good buddy growing up, who remains my good buddy today, we even did a show together on Fox Sports Ohio, was Jeff Phelps. He grew up down the street from me.
That's right.
So Jeff was living in a apartment complex at the time in Cuyahoga Falls called Timber Top.
Yeah.
And it's still there today. So I knew Mark Price lived there, but that's all I knew was, hey, Jeff said, Mark Price lives here. He's living here now as after his rookie year with the Cavs. So Jeff would work. He was working at Channel 43, but he would leave me the key in the summer under his mat so I could get into the swimming pool. So I said, hey, I'm going to come over. My other buddy from CVCA and I are going to come over and go swimming. And he said, yeah, sure, fine. I'll leave the key under the mat while I go to work. So we got the key to the Timber Top swimming pool. We went in the pool, and it's just he and I in there because it's, it's like noon on a Tuesday. And he and my buddy and I are swimming in there. And in walks Mark Price as the only other person at the pool.
Amazing.
After his rookie year. So I wasn't yet a reporter, but I was putting on my reporter's hat.
Yeah.
Eventually. And I just started talking to him. I'm like, look, if you're going to be in the pool with two guys our age, you're going to have to get,
That's right.
We're going to pepper you with questions. And he managed it well. And I said, what do you, I got comfortable enough to the point where I said, what do you think about them drafting Kevin Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
And Mark just said, I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they felt the need to do that. And he was open and honest and a regular guy about it, that he was not pleased that the Cavs drafted a point guard at 7.
Yeah.
At number 7 in Kevin Johnson when he was already on the team. And John Bagley, too, was on the team at that point. So he was not real thrilled. And then, from the opening day of training camp, I've talked to Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson's words were, he kicked my butt. From the minute we walked on the court at training camp, he just took it right at me. He didn't talk to me. He didn't say, welcome to the team. He just made it clear that he was going to be the starter. And of course, by mid-season of that year, the Cavs had traded Kevin Johnson and got Larry Nance Sr.
Yep.
But I just thought that was, here we are in a swimming pool. Right. I'm 18 years old. Yeah. You know, in walks Mark Price as the only other person at the pool. And I'll never forget that memory. I was just like, you know, like you said, he was your hero. Mm-hmm. And he walks in and I'm just like, what on earth? Who would have known at that time that I would be someday on the podcast? And it's really, I mean, I'm sure, you know, I do give Mark some credit, but don't tell him this. I give you the lion's share of the credit.
I'm not sure why.
for me coming on the podcast. When Mark comes on to this show, I'll tell him he gets the lion's share.
There you go.
But for you, I mean, because we lie on this show all the time, you know.
True story. I remember, you know, again, we you know, kind of during the week, we'll shoot a text to one another, you know, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And he was the one, and I was so excited because I'm like, man, I'm a huge Sam Amico fan. I was so excited, and that's why I'm so honored to be on this today. I was always a huge fan of yours, and so I was like, absolutely, you think we can get him? He's like, yeah, he's, you know, I know him, and I'm like, okay, cool, that's awesome. So, yeah, no, that was his idea, 100% driven by Mr. Mark Price.
Well, if you're a fan of me, that makes two. You and my mother, and I really don't even guarantee her.
Yeah.
So, but you know, I remember listening to the podcast a few times. I kid you not, listening to it a few times, and I thought, boy, wouldn't that be a dream come true to go on there?
How about that?
How about that? I know
that's awesome.
God really, you know, works in great mysterious ways. So
it really does.
Aaron, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It was great to have you on. I probably will have you on for every Mark Price podcast. I come on. You got to come on this show 3 times.
I'm the player to be named later in those trades.
Yeah, but once the season gets here, we will have more to talk about, even more. I mean, we've already been here about an hour.
Yeah.
So imagine what happens when we have actual basketball to talk
That's
about.
right. But, absolutely. Well, I'm going to put my headgear on. I'm going to go put my
there you go.
Braces headgear on. I probably still have it somewhere. Believe it or not, I did have braces at one point. But no, that's so funny, man. I am going to text you who I think that is, because based on some of the dates that you've been talking about, I'm pretty sure we're around the same age, so I'm dying to know if it's who I think it is, because she's actually a really good friend of mine. She's a very dear friend of mine.
Oh, don't if it's the same girl, do not tell her that.
That's why I said we didn't put her on blast on the show, so it's fine.
I don't know that I've seen her since. In fact, I'm sure I haven't seen her since I graduated from high school. I was a couple years older than her, gosh, I don't know. Yeah. I hope she's not still wearing the night braces.
To my knowledge, she's not.
Okay, good. Hey, you know, I probably needed them, so I'm not making fun. I'm just saying.
Yeah, sure.
It's not the ideal transition from the girl I puppy love, madly in love with, to the rebound girl.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I was many people's rebound. I was like the backup. You know?
You're far too hard on yourself, man. Trust me. Maybe we'll do a whole episode sometime on dating stories, because I have a feeling I could one up that one, and it's pretty heartbreaking. But I'm saving it for my book that I'm never going to write. It'll be in there.
Yeah. I could write a book on dating that's
right.
about my life. That would be high comedy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, maybe we'll do that together. That sounds good.
Right. Yeah. The dating gone bad Mark Price podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it, and I always appreciate you, Sam.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, and I'm always glad that you guys reach out to me and that you're willing to come on here and talk basketball and other things, faith and other things that we discuss during our many chats. So
that's right.
Aaron, thanks so much for joining, and everybody will be back next week. It won't be Friday the 13th anymore, and if I survive Elm Street, we'll be back Friday the 20th. So thanks again, Aaron, and everybody else. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining.